3 true Hookman horror stories that will send chills down your spine. Real encounters, real terror. Stay tuned if you're ready for a fright. Madison had always been strangely drawn to the darkness since childhood. While other children secretly read Snow White or Cinderella under the covers at night, Madison would clutch a flashlight beneath her sheets and dive into books filled with ghost stories. But those were just stories, products of imagination. Madison, however, was searching for something real, something tangible, something that could bleed and haunt the night. When Madison turned 10, her curiosity about the supernatural took a more intense turn after her friend Chloe had a spine-chilling experience near the familiar train tracks in their small town. Chloe's recounting of that night planted seeds of terror within their little group. One afternoon, after stepping off the school bus, Chloe confided in Madison, "Last night I saw Hookman. I was so scared that I ran as fast as I could. Mom was furious when she found out I'd been out so late. But honestly, it was worth every second of it." Hookman was a well-known legend in their town. The locals said he was a railway worker who, during a tragic accident on the tracks, lost his hand and his lantern. Without the light to guide him, he wandered lost in the darkness until he bled to death. The story goes that his restless spirit now roams the tracks, carrying a lantern in one hand and a terrifying hook in place of the hand he lost, as if searching for something he never found. After hearing this tale, the story of Hookman left a deep impression on Madison. She became increasingly curious, spending recesses in the library, searching through every book she could find about ghosts and local legends. To her, Hookman wasn't just another spooky tale. He was a lonely, sorrowful spirit, much like how she sometimes felt herself. That night, Madison stayed up late, researching more about Hookman and other ghost stories on the internet. At first, her parents thought it was cute, even amusing. But as months went by, her obsession started to concern them. Madison began sneaking out of the house to wander near the train tracks, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive Hookman. Despite being grounded several times, her curiosity only grew stronger. She soon mastered the art of sneaking out without making a sound. As the years passed, Madison delved deeper into this mysterious world. She built up a sizable collection of books on urban legends and the supernatural. She began associating with goths and joined them in various evening rituals and seances. She always hoped to somehow make contact with Hookman, yet he never appeared to her. Other stories occasionally captured her interest, but Hookman always remained her favorite. By the time she turned 19, she had a hook tattooed over her heart, a permanent reminder of the legend that had become a part of her life. At 20, just before graduating, Madison and her best friend Lauren finally devised a plan to summon Hookman. Lauren's parents were out of town for the weekend, so they bought some cheap wine to build up their courage. When night fell, they retreated to a dark closet in the back of Lauren's house. This closet was eerily silent, engulfed in thick darkness. It was here that they decided the ritual would take place. Madison stood alone in the closet, the door closed behind her. The only light came from a solitary candle flickering before her, casting long, wavering shadows on the floor. She began chanting an incantation she had read from a worn book, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke the ancient words. The incantation was said to reach out to the spirits of those who had perished while working on the railways, drawn from an old grimoire her father had collected. After finishing the chant, Madison made a small cut on her hand, letting a few drops of blood fall onto the candle's flame. For a brief moment, the flame flickered green, and an unsettling chill spread through the room. Then, everything went still. Suddenly, the candlelight started to dim, and in the corner of the room, a faint green glow began to emerge. The light slowly expanded, revealing a shadowy figure standing before her. The figure held a lantern, hanging from what appeared to be a hook. Madison's breath caught in her throat as she realized she was face to face with the infamous Hookman. Terrified yet fascinated, Madison slowly moved toward the figure. Suddenly it lifted its head, and its gaze met hers, sending a shiver down her spine. Madison felt all the strength drain from her body, but then she felt a slight pressure on her chest, right where her hook tattoo was. It was as if Hookman was acknowledging her presence, recognizing her devotion. Madison began to cry, overwhelmed with both fear and joy. But just then, there was a loud knock on the door. Lauren called from outside. "Madison, are you okay?" Madison slowly emerged from the closet, an odd smile on her face. "Lauren," she whispered, "I saw him. I really saw Hookman." But when Lauren looked into the room, all she saw was emptiness. The candle was out, and the room was bathed in nothing but silence and shadows. But the expression on Madison's face was undeniable. What she had witnessed was real. From that night on, Madison began to feel Hookman's presence in any dark, lonely place. She was no longer afraid. Hookman had become an inseparable part of her life, and whenever that green light would appear, Madison knew she was never truly alone. Something or someone was always with her, just like her own shadow. One day before our college graduation, my friends and I were pumped for a new adventure. Among us, Michael was the oldest and most mature. That evening, we hit up a small grocery store in South Main and grabbed a few cases of beer. With a cooler packed with cheap booze, we decided to head to a secluded spot we kept as our little secret. As night fell, we planned to venture deeper into the forest. I'd never been that far before, but I knew there was a small dam followed by a rock pile. After crossing the dam and reaching the rocks, we spotted an old shack. It was in ruins and looked straight up haunted. The shack had siding made from mismatched scraps, and the roof was a patchwork of rusted steel. The wooden frame was rotting, and the aluminum storm door at the front was strangely intact. It felt like something was off, and our curiosity only grew. When we got closer, Jeff, the bravest of us all, threw a beer bottle at the shack. The bottle shattered, and instantly we heard bizarre noises coming from inside, an incomprehensible roar, metallic clangs, and swirling clouds of dust. But the worst was the horrifying sound of what seemed like a human growl and sinister whispers. We all glanced at each other in shock and started running. Our only thought was to get out of there as fast as possible. But as we fled, we saw something chilling. A massive silhouette emerged from behind the shack holding a long metal hook. Seeing that hook made our blood run cold. The figure let out a deep, eerie laugh that drove us to panic. We ran as fast as we could, but a dark shadow seemed to be following us, as if the Hookman's spirit was chasing us down. When we finally got back, we found that the once empty area was now marked with strange symbols, deep carvings in the trees and hook-like drawings on the ground. The fear in our bodies was palpable. The next day, I went back to the shack alone. I had to uncover the truth behind what we'd experienced. Stepping inside, everything seemed eerily calm, but then I felt a cold draft chilling me to the bone. I made my way to a corner of the shack and found an old bathroom. It was decrepit, a cracked mirror, rotting tiles, and an old bathtub stained with something that looked like blood. Next to the bathtub, among a pile of junk, I found a hook, a long metal hook that might have belonged to the Hookman. As I examined the hook, I noticed an odd, ancient smell. Suddenly, I heard a chilling sound coming from inside the shack. It was a mix of icy cold and dread. I turned around to see a dark shadow slowly approaching. It was as if the Hookman had returned. The silhouette of the Hookman became clearer, and his eyes seemed to pierce through the darkness. The hook in his hand glinted menacingly in the dark, and his laughter filled every corner of the room with terror. I was paralyzed with fear, staring at the Hookman, whose face bore a grotesque, malevolent grin. My terror grew as I realized the Hookman's shadow wasn't just a figment of the dark, it had a distinctly evil smile. His eyes seemed to see right through me. I tried to run, but the shack's door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. In the pitch-black shack, I could hear terrifying noises. The Hookman's footsteps and the scrape of his sharp hook. His sinister laughter and horrifying presence were overwhelming. I felt as if the Hookman's malevolent spirit was relentlessly pursuing me, knowing his infernal power would never let me go. Desperate, I burst through the shack's door and fled into the forest. As I ran into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the terror of the Hookman was still lurking behind me. I never had the courage to return to that place, knowing the Hookman's dark presence still haunted the shack, and his shadow would forever chase me. On a chilly autumn evening, Lily and Tom set out to enjoy a romantic night away from the hustle and bustle of the city. They parked their car in a secluded spot, surrounded by dense forest, where the tranquility of the night provided an intimate setting. As the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the surroundings, they nestled closer together in the car. seeking warmth against the cold breeze. The radio played softly, enhancing the romantic atmosphere. This serene moment was abruptly shattered when the radio's soothing tunes were interrupted by a news bulletin. The newsreader's voice was tinged with urgency and fear. "We have breaking news. An extremely dangerous serial killer has escaped from the local psychiatric hospital. The suspect is armed with a hook and is considered highly dangerous. Everyone is advised to stay indoors, keep all doors and windows locked, and remain vigilant." Lily's heart raced with dread. She looked at Tom with a worried expression. Tom, trying to maintain a calm facade, gave a reassuring smile and said, "It's probably nothing to worry about. Let's get out of here." The once peaceful evening now brimmed with anxiety as they decided to leave the area quickly. Tom started the car and they drove away from the isolated spot. However, after a short while, Lily heard an unsettling sound, a strange scraping noise against the car door. Her anxiety intensified and she glanced nervously at Tom, who was focused on the road. They soon arrived at a service station on the outskirts of town. Tom got out of the car to check the tires, while Lily remained inside, growing increasingly anxious. In the eerie silence of the service station, Lily's unease grew. Suddenly, she heard a continuous thumping sound, something repeatedly banging on the car's roof. Terrified, Lily's breath became shallow. She tried to see through the rearview mirror, but the thumping persisted. In a desperate attempt to identify the source of the noise, she got out of the car and looked up at the roof. What she saw was horrifying. The escaped killer was sitting on the car's roof. His hook glinted menacingly in the dim light of the service station. In his other hand, he held a gruesome sight, Tom's severed head. This ghastly scene left Lily paralyzed with fear. Unable to scream, her throat dry, Lily ran frantically into the service station, pleading for help. The staff, recognizing the gravity of the situation, quickly called the police. The police arrived and began to escort Lily to safety, but they instructed her not to look behind. Despite their warnings, her curiosity and terror compelled her to glance back. What she saw was a chilling sight, the aftermath of Tom's brutal murder and the shadowy figure of the killer disappearing into the night. The police ensured Lily's safety, but the harrowing experience left an indelible mark on her memory. The killer was never apprehended, and the echo of the thumping on the car roof, along with the image of Tom's severed head, would forever haunt her. The dark night and the cold breeze seemed to bear witness to the horrors of that night, ensuring it remained the most terrifying experience of Lily's life.